The Alexander Cell Saga, Chapter 4, Nigeria, first time round. This picture shows typical scene that I encountered when I first arrived at Shell BP Nigeria Development Corporation, and this was the state of their pipelines. I went to a London hotel where I met a very pleasant gentleman called Frank Lewis from a major oil company, who said that they had the need of a corrosion control engineer to help a Nigerian engineer on the practical side of the operation in Warri, Nigeria. I knew that I had several months more work, if not a year or two, in North Wales, where my social and working conditions were very pleasant. I was not particularly keen for a change at this period, as I had an extramarital affair going on, and so did my wife. Frank Lewis said that the serviceman company would employ me, give me lots of money, good working conditions and plenty of holidays. I thought of paying the mortgage off, travel to exotic places and technical job progress. Okay. He then introduced me to the service company and they all agreed to my terms. As I was to assist a qualified engineer, I couldn't really go wrong. After all, he would be telling me what to do, and I found myself more competent than the bunch of cowboys that I'd met so far in the industry. To be on the safe side, I bought my own copy of Peabody's whilst I was in London, getting myself shot through with anti-tropical death vaccines. I flew to Lagos, where I was met by the service company manager, Dave Rushworth, who asked me if I would be ready to go with him to the Ikoyi Club. This was a very colonial place in Lagos where we met Frank Lewis, drinking gin and tonic, and Mrs. Rushworth, who looked very colonial. Frank said that there had been a change of plans during the corrosion, due to the corrosion engineer in Port Harcourt resigning because they wouldn't give him marital status. They had surprised him by accepting his resignation due to the fact that they knew that I was on the plane on the way out. Would I take the job, and did I think that I could handle it? I heard myself say, "No problem." I was thinking, "Oh, me in charge? Help!" It was agreed that I should be diverted and take over running the corrosion control section of a major region of a massive oil production operation. I really had arrived, and I could have just easily dropped right in the shit. I worried overnight, but it was too late to start reading. Peabody's again, so I just resolved to make the best I could of a very frightening situation. At Port Harcourt, I was introduced to the Nigerian corrosion engineer, Mark Derefaka, who had just handed in his resignation and only had less than a month before leaving the section. The expatriate who I was replacing was not around, but I saw him for about 20 minutes the following day before he got on the plane home. I cannot remember any of the handover information that he gave me, as the whole setup was totally unfamiliar to me. I was introduced to the deputy head of engineering, Hans Mayer, and told him that I had to review the section and that I would do a complete status report. I thought, this will keep you off my back and give me a bit of breathing space to think what the hell I'm going to do. He seemed very satisfied and very busy, so I was able to retire to the office, meet the staff and read through the records, etc. The staff called me Master, which I found repugnant, and I told them to call me Roger. They replied, "Yes, Master." After a while they did call me Roger, and we formed a really good working team. For the time being, however, I told them to carry on with what they were used to do, during which I familiarised myself with the work of the section. The region consisted of over 30 oil fields spread over several states of eastern Nigeria, which included a large area of swamp. Each oil field is served by gathering stations to which the oil flows from the wellheads. This picture is me at one of the wellheads. A wellhead consists of a small clearing with an arrangement of valves known as the Christmas tree sticking out of the ground. From this there are 1, 2 or 3 3-inch to 6-inch diameter steel pipelines called flow lines, which carry the oil from the well, and sometimes a couple of smaller diameter pipelines, gas lines, which carry compressed gas to the well for secondary recovery. The number of wells can vary, and the number of gathering centres, called flow stations, depends on the number of wells and the most effective arrangement for collecting the oil. Some oil fields only had 1 flow station, whereas Imo River, for example, had 3. A flow station is a mass of pipework and steel vessels through which the oil passes to allow the solids and water to settle out and the gas to come out of solution. This is a picture of one such flow station. The gas is used for secondary recovery, which means it is pumped back down to the wells to retain the pressure which forces the oil out. When I first arrived in Nigeria, secondary recovery was in its early stages, and most gas was simply burnt close to the flow station on huge flare stacks. The roar of a 15-metre flame was so loud you could not hear yourself speak within 100 metres of it. The heat was so intense that it overpowered the heat of the tropical sun for 200 or 300 metres. It was a disgusting waste of energy. Some of the water that was produced was simply piped outside of the flow station compound and allowed to drain away. At the land locations, these areas became the water holes which the locals used for bathing, washing clothes, etc. Proper facilities could have been added for very little expense, and it occurred to me that the valuable public relations opportunity was being wasted, as well as the chance to actually help some real people. The flow lines at the land location were made of bare steel, welded together and simply left on the ground surface. They followed common routes from the wellheads, and consequently, as you get closer to the flow station, you would see more and more flow lines on each trace. These traces converged at the flow stations like spiders' legs, some of which contained 20 or 30 flow lines, all seeming to have been thrown on the ground in a tangled heap. The lower pipes were covered with soil and extremely rusty, whereas the top ones seemed in reasonably good condition. The oil was pumped from the flow station through a medium-sized pipeline called a delivery line to a manifold where it joined the products of other oil fields to be carried in a trunk line system to the tank farm at Bonny Terminal. The situation in the swamp was slightly different in that all flow lines were wrapped. No, that doesn't mean the pop singers chanted songs about them. It means that they were coated with insulating materials to prevent corrosion. Together with all delivery pipelines and trunk lines, the swamp lines, flow lines were supposedly under cathodic protection from 36 cathodic protection installations.